Okay, so the first reading for this winter retreat, as I think probably most people know, the general overall theme that we're going to be taking up for the winter retreat for the next 3 months is around the fourth Satipatthana on mental qualities, as Ajahn Jeff described it, the frame of reference on mental qualities. Dhammas. But we talked about it, and we thought maybe the first bit of time, the first week or so, we'd just do some brief introductions before jumping right into the fourth Satipatthana theme. Maybe a few readings, introductory kind of readings. For myself, I've got the first 3 evenings here, and then Ajahn Chindal will take on over after that. And I thought I'd start with a couple of nights, tonight and tomorrow night, of reading a few excerpts from Ajahn Sucitto's Breathing Like a Buddha, just to sort of have some contemplations around meditation itself, just some basic meditation instructions a la Ajahn Sucitto. And then the third night of my shift here, I'd probably just do some more general Satipatthana readings, just to get us around the theme of Satipatthana in general, to give it a context when we jump into the fourth. So, without further ado, I will just start with some readings, a couple of excerpts from Breathing Like a Buddha. Actually, I think I'll just preface it too with saying that the Breathing Like a Buddha book is one that Ajahn Sucitto has structured around the theme of the Anapanasati Sutta. So his commentary is going through the entire Anapanasati Sutta. And meditation objects, meditation subjects, meditation styles vary from person to person. So this is his interpretation, which is one that I actually find very refreshing and useful and applicable. And up to date for myself. It doesn't mean that it's the only way that people can approach meditation practice. There's many different styles and methods that work for some, don't work for others. So this isn't meant to be sort of like a you must do it this way kind of thing. One always has to be using, as I mentioned the other night, I think in a talk, the quality of vimamsa, evaluation, review, to make sure that this is whatever you're doing is resulting in having good results, resulting in the increase of wholesome states and the decrease of unwholesome states. So just to keep that in mind as we go through this. Okay, so this is starting with the very beginning. I'm not the very first paragraph, but on page 14, starting with this. I was introduced to meditation in 1975 through a systematic approach of maintaining moment-by-moment mindfulness of the sensations associated with breathing. I found that approach to be useful for discipline, but quite intense and demanding, and not conducive to joy and ease. Moreover, when I looked into the original texts, referring to the Pali texts, I found that they didn't mention awareness of physical sensations, nor of mindfulness as a practice of tracking sensations a moment at a time. Though these references are plausible interpretations of, quote, mindfully one knows one is breathing in, breathing out. But as an exploration, I went back to the basics of noticing how I was aware of breathing and picked up on the fluid rhythm of the life force that the physical act of breathing moves and moderates. The Pali word for this is pana, as in anapanasati. This is the energy, rather than the sensations, associated with breathing. Now, I'm just going to make a comment there, just for myself. This is one area that I think one might question that a little bit, and I think it is mostly related to the use of the word sensations. So, of course, Sucitto is saying that pana, the breathing, refers more to the energy rather than actual gross sensations. To me, I experience that actual energetic quality as a sensation also, just a much more subtle sensation. Just depends on how you use the word sensations, but it's an actual sensation in my mind, but much more subtle, not necessarily the gross physical movement of lungs expanding and contracting. Which is also, in my mind, one stage that one can use in Anapanasati is actually noticing some of the gross physical sensations of the breathing process. But then he kind of jumps over all of that very quickly and moves straight to referring to the breath energy as the quality that we're looking to understand and experience. So this is the energy rather than the sensations associated with breathing. This aspect of the breath as an energy is commonly acknowledged in the spiritual traditions of India and China, as well as in non-mechanist cultures. So it seems reasonable to assume that it informed the meditative process that the Buddha outlined. The significant point is that this embodied energy connects the material to the mental realm. Embodied energy runs through the stirring, stress, calm, and gladdening of our entire nervous system. If it's distorted, it inflames and corrupts the mind. If it's healthy, it clears it. Accordingly, a trained focus on the energy associated with breathing offers a means to calm, brighten, understand, and clear states of mind and heart. If this seems unusual, note that in the Buddha's discourses, there is no mention of maintaining a one-pointed focus on any particular physical feature of the body. On the other hand, focusing on the energy associated with a living body does fulfill instructions such as thoroughly and fully sensitive to the entire body and calming the bodily formation. And it brings around the bodily ease that mindfulness of breathing is said to lead to. Discourses in the collection on Anapanasati Sanyutta 54, adds remarks such as, quote, "Neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued," and "No shaking or trembling occurs in the body, and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind," when cultivating this meditation. This is not suggestive of an intense drive, but of accessing an ease that is felt in the body, so that, quote, "My mind, by not clinging, was liberated from the taints," unquote. References such as these support the view that the aspect of the body that is being focused on is its autonomic nervous system, where the reflexes that trigger our emotions and mind states occur, such as getting irritated, defensive, or inspired is a reflex, not a decision. As an extension, quote, "bodily formation," would refer to the weave of embodied energies that are conducted through the connective tissue and calmed through breathing. You may know this if you practice Hatha Yoga or Qigong, which maps the weave in terms of nadis and meridians. Approached in this way, breathing provides a path to the refreshment and soothing of body and mind. This effect encourages one to persevere with meditation without a huge amount of willpower. This is a pragmatic approach. The vitality and ease that a settled body can bring can lift the mind out of oppressive emotional and psychological obstructions. It also brings around a greater degree of grounded stability. This has far-reaching significance. With an increase in hyperactive mentality, attention disorders, psychological breakdowns, and social dysfunction, as well as a disregard for the natural world, society in general has become disembodied and groundless. This condition speaks of an urgent need to get aligned with the subtle and life-enhancing aspects of our material reality. In the microcosm of our own bodies, Anapanasati offers this. The discourses describe the ongoing cultivation that leads through samadhi to liberation as being based on recollecting virtue and thereby feeling uplifted. So the ethical clarity of right view is the foundation, the guiding principle for what one should be mindful of and with what intent. This right mindfulness settles on the gladness of the heart and lets that steady to bring around bodily ease. It's a flowing process rather than a push to get concentrated. The stage in that process wherein mental and bodily energies settle and consolidate is called samadhi. This is an experience that the standard English translation, concentration, does not adequately cover. Samadhi is a firm abiding in ease that serves as the platform for clear seeing and liberation. Meditation begins with letting go. To introduce the practice, if you disengage your attention from any particular object or topic, but remain attentive, you'll probably notice certain fundamental qualities, even if these are only a backdrop to the streams of thought that swirl through your mind. These qualities aren't bound up with circumstance, and hence are more stable. They include the vitality, solidity, and warmth that tell you have a body, along with a nonverbal awareness of that embodied condition. If you settle into that matrix, you'll likely become aware of the rhythm of breathing. That is, the overall flow. Being involuntary, it is restful. Being rhythmic, it attracts attention and is soothing. Just settling into this for 5 or 10 minutes can be a relief and offer a perspective on one's current preoccupations. And yet, you'll notice that the mind will rarely stay with breathing for long. It gets driven to memories and speculation, to irritation and longing, to recrimination and anxiety. Why one doesn't relax for long is because there are underlying tendencies and issues that come to the surface when other circumstances calm down. So meditation, like life in general, isn't just about relaxing. In line with the teachings, one has to train. Guidance is needed. On the other hand, too much control restricts embodiment and strains the mind. Keeping your awareness in touch with breathing offers a middle way between doing too much or too little. Too much mental doing blocks receptivity and compresses the energy of breathing. Doing too little means one isn't maintaining a responsive supervision and encouragement of the process. Although breathing is involuntary, and hence brings its steady and pervasive energy to bear on our impulses, that energy can be refined and directed. Then reactions and attachments over which we seem to have no control, and which thinking is unable to check or dispel, can be penetrated at their roots and released through the direct insight that this process facilitates. As I've said before, this takes skill and time, but what makes it manageable is that it is an approach based on pleasure. And as you'll see in this sutta and elsewhere, the Buddha encourages a pleasure based on steadying and being sensitive to body and heart. In my opinion, returning to the root discourses in order to ponder and practice in accord with what they do and don't say is a wise approach. For example, the Buddha was adamant that in using anapanasati for awakening, one needed to fulfill this practice in line with the instructions that he gave. This discourse is the record of a teaching that he offered to an assembly of bhikkhus who had been earnestly cultivating several other meditations for an unbroken 4-month session. But this wasn't the only time or place. In other places, the Buddha mentions anapanasati among a list of practices that include the contemplation of the unattractive aspects of the body and the sending forth of loving kindness. On one occasion, he specifically advocated anapanasati as an antidote to wayward thinking. Having said this much, I have to add that I don't see the pursuit of anapanasati as something that a beginner can fulfill without other forms of mind cultivation. It is not a matter of doggedly fixing attention on the breath. This approach can actually intensify rather than correct mental imbalances. Wisely used, anapanasati comprises one theme in a mental cultivation that should encourage ethical orientation, careful attention, goodwill, and a turning away from worldly aims and values. Guiding mental behavior in line with these themes, one can return to in and out breathing over the years as a regular meditation practice. Certainly, cultivate spacious awareness, relax goal orientation, and self-criticism. Yes, of course. But the cultivation of breathing as pana within a safe and grounded embodiment offers something to come back to and work at. It will be a practice that is enriched by all the skills that you cultivate. If practiced even for 5 or 10 minutes, it is a key to alleviating tension, hyperactivity, overwhelm, and fatigue. As breathing is universal, mindfulness of it doesn't require adopting any view or philosophical standpoint. On the contrary, I'd say that it causes views to fade out, other than that of how suffering and stress come to an end. And that is a fitting and universal aim. Okay, so that's from the very first part of the book. And then throughout this book, he does go through many different commentaries, taking each stage at a time and then offering comments on them. I'm going to jump to what the instructions talk about in terms of training breathe in fully and completely sensitive to the entire body, and breathing in and out, calming the bodily formation. These are steps 3 and 4 in the Anapanasati Sutta. For the forest-dwelling this is starting on page 83. For the forest-dwelling contemplatives of the Buddha's time, who often lived in seclusion and were distanced from social appearance, the visual perception of the body was not that relevant. Such a person would directly know the body through how it felt and how its living qualities arose. Also, the intelligence of the body was essential in order to navigate with full awareness through the uncertainties of natural, irregular, and unlit territory that was shared with animals and outlaws. Within this embodied domain, breathing is an essential centering medium, connected as it is to emotions and to bodily vitality. Although other sensations and energies come and go in accordance with circumstances, breathing is the ongoing life force that brings the individual into an embodied form. It's also that which can be immediately felt, forming the experience of body as it gets aroused, strengthens, becomes agitated, or relaxes. The bodily experience of breathing in and out is then rightly referred to as an active formative process, kaya sankhara, bodily formation. And as it gets calmed, it supports subtle and sensitive mind states. This soothing and steadying of the kaya sankhara is given further significance in the discourses by instructions on it being connected to unskillful actions, one's own or those initiated by others. And then a quote from the Samyutta Nikaya. Either on one's own initiative, Ananda, or prompted by others, one generates that bodily, verbal, mental sankhara conditioned by which pleasure and pain arise internally. Either deliberately, Ananda, or undeliberately, one generates that bodily or verbal or mental sankhara conditioned by which pleasure and pain arise internally. This is evidenced by the aroused bodily energy that we might experience amongst a crowd of angry people, or when our heart gets stirred into consumer thirst through advertising. There's also the agitated nervous energy that accompanies restlessness, the flaring of passion, or the clogged and stagnant bodily sense that accompanies despond. So kaya sankhara is not just the breathing, but more broadly speaking, embodied energy, and in particular the weave of patterns that it forms, such as hyper or hypo, dependent on states of mind. These patterns can become fixed, as in the case of oversensitivity or depression, or when one is acting compulsively. Such behavior patterns are a breeding ground for the hindrances of sense desire, ill will, lethargy, restlessness, and doubt. These hindrances cannot be released through intellectual understanding or mental willpower alone. One has to work on kaya sankhara. I think that's just if you're going to notice anything in here, that's a really good point to reflect on and keep in mind that the hindrances, as we talk about them, not just in meditation, but kind of how we often run in our lives throughout the day, really just by trying to understand them on an intellectual level, conceptual level, abstract level, and try and kind of psychologize our way out of them or justify them or think our way through them generally doesn't work so well, that you really have to go to the underlying experience on an energetic level and allow them to release in that way. So I think that's a really important point that he makes. However, when the breathing channels and steadies kaya sankhara, it brightens and calms the entire body. Then there's not much room for hindrances. Reset around receptivity. Attuning to how the body regulates its breathing involves resetting how the mind operates. As if reading a pulse with your fingers, your training is to be sensitive, open, and restrained while listening to the energy system that runs through the entire body and is bound up with the mind. This receptivity can be refined with a degree of precision. Open means that we're attentive to the body as an intelligent entirety. Rather than decide what it should feel or how breathing should be, being open to how the body is allows it to relax and unwind. The breathing process becomes increasingly apparent as we put aside a lot of mental content, including ideas about meditation, and prioritize this embodied intelligence. This means training yourself to relate to any unbalanced or confused mental content by aligning its energies to those of the entirety of the upright body. You keep in touch with the feeling of that presence so that it becomes a guide to being centered. Here your breathing is relaxed and replenishing. Any mental dissonances can then be registered in terms of disturbances in the body and released by connecting them to this open and breathful presence. As for being restrained, the idea may bring up images of a choke chain on mastiffs, but in this context, it means putting a check on thinking that follows, reacts to, or even obsessively wrangles with the hindrances. Restraint supports pausing and returning to the center rather than following inherited assumptions. In this way, careful, direct attention replaces careless attention. Through careful, deep attention, yoniso manasikara, the verbal and nonverbal messages of our unawakened state, with their tension and turbulence, get to be expressed, but also gradually released. I think I'm just going to pause there for a minute just to comment that oftentimes he refers in other teachings, he doesn't mention it specifically here, but that process of allowing oneself to experience kind of the results of our patterns that we've established. So it is something that we have to do. We have to experience the perceptions and the feelings that arise based on conditions, how we react, the patterns that we've established in reacting to situations with anger or desire or whatever. And we have to know those and allow those, but we don't have to go with them. And he's often expressed that before, and so, like that we don't have to generate unskillful sankharas. We have to experience the perceptions and feelings, but we don't have to create new volitional actions of body, speech, or mind from them. That's where the wise attention comes in. We're attending very wisely to what's arising and the quality of it in the realm of perceptions and feelings. But we can be wise in how we choose to respond to them in creating new karma. So that's kind of, I think a really crucial point. We can't just push everything away and say, I'm not going to attend to it. I don't want to deal with it. But we don't want to actually jump into it, move with it, and create new habit patterns or reinforce old habit patterns that would be unskillful. So, practical details, sensing the entire body. To get the sense of the entire body, the initial step is to disengage from specific sensations while inquiring, how do I know I have or am in a body? And again, there's that word sensations, which I read to mean like the gross, real physical sensations, but he is talking about tuning into the energetic qualities, the energetic resonances in the body and mind. So how do I know I have or am in a body? Then notice what you feel. To get an overall impression, you might imagine you're in a shower. This impression may not be that clear, but one can train the mind to be more sensitive by moving awareness through the body in a gentle sweep. For example, if breathing settles in the head, extend awareness down the back of the head and the spine as you breathe in and out. You may not get all the details, but slowly sweep down your back and down one leg at a time to the sole of the respective foot. The soles of the feet will tingle. They are sensitive energy points. Then draw awareness up through the soles with the in-breath to return to the head. Over the course of time, you may notice that the body energy begins to flow along these and other lines, being most clearly discerned between muscle groups or where the muscles are more relaxed. You can cultivate a similar process in the lateral direction, that is, through extending awareness from the center of the head or chest, etc., down the arms and into the palms of the hands. Keep the hands in the samadhi mudra, that is, with palms relaxed and turned up, fingers and thumb tips completing the circle above them. You can keep the hands separate, one on each thigh, with each thumb tip resting on its respective index or middle finger, or both, or have one hand cradling the other in your lap, with the thumb tips touching. Palms and soles are particularly receptive. Imagine having a small ball in each palm or sole that steadily inflates and subsides with the breathing. But however you relax your palms, if you include the soles of your feet in your field of awareness, they will relax too. This embodied sympathy eases the body into a more vibrant and open form. So rather than move your awareness in line with the breath rhythm, as with inhale into left foot, exhale out of left foot, inhale into right foot, and so on, simply linger in one part for a while as breathing goes on, feeling that area of the body respond. When any clenching or numbness is gone and the area feels full and rich, you can extend further. You might imagine that a soft ball is in the center of your body, and as you breathe, it expands and subsides in all directions simultaneously. As this effect spreads to cover the entire body, kaya sankara is smoothed and steadied. If you feel restrictions, don't go into them, but widen your awareness over them as if it's a canopy. For example, with a tight chest, widen across it to include the cavities where the arms join the trunk and on down through the hands. For the abdomen, widen awareness into the back and down through the grooves where the legs join the trunk. Imagining small breathing balls in the arm-chest cavities and the leg-abdomen grooves may help this. If things are going well with such practices, you might refine your attention to tracking a line that proceeds from the crown down through the throat, heart, navel, and the endpoint of the breathing below the navel. These anatomical references are only approximate pointers. The heart area may include the central upper torso between the breastbone and the back. The navel and lower area may widen and deepen to include the entire base of the body and the perineum. Trace sensitively, lingering on any numb or agitated points, and let awareness breathe into them. When the entire body is full of clean energy, it feels comfortably solid, and there isn't room for hindrances to get embedded. The citta is a sympathetic awareness, and it takes on the energies of what you give attention to, for good or for bad. Bury yourself in media, and you absorb that buzzy and stimulated energy, to the point where the mind can barely function without stimulation. On the other hand, if you attend to steady and bright bodily energy, your awareness becomes steady and bright. This is a crucial point. Meditation allows the citta to feel good without force or stimulation. As for the breathing itself, after practicing for a while, you'll more readily detect breathing as a stirring that becomes a flow of vitality. Along with that, there's a quality of enrichment, brightening, and then of relaxing and releasing. Pauses will lengthen between the end of the exhalation and the beginning of the inhalation, and vice versa. I'd again emphasize that these pauses, in terms of muscular movement, are a vital part of the energetic cycle of breathing. They are windows into another level of energy, open energy. It's the open but grounded state that activated energy discharges into as the out-breath concludes. In that pause, the breath picks up fresh energy. Learn to linger in order to sense the full cycle of breathing. It's one way of discharge through the exhalation, rest and refreshment, in the pause phase, brightening with the inhalation, and an opening when the inhalation ends. This is the healthy cycle. As we'll see, this also resets the citta. So I'll stop there with the readings and just, the basic, some of the basic points that I pick up from this, and people are welcome to ask any questions or comments. We'll have a few minutes for that before we close. But it's basically just really emphasizing the teachings about the third and the fourth steps of the Anapanasati Sutta, where breathing in and out, we are sensitive to the entire body, and breathing in and out, we are trying to calm this formation, this bodily formation, this embodied energy. And that I think over and over again, from the readings and teachings, particularly of Luang Por Sucitto, there's almost this emphasis on really developing this overall sensitive body awareness, and then letting the breathing become apparent, rather than having to establish this intention to sit down and immediately start focusing your attention on the breathing process itself. Let it be more natural and relaxed. That can, produce, unless you're really calm and present going into that kind of practice, it can lead to a lot of tension. I've experienced that over the years, in my early years especially, many times. It's like you go in there and you think, okay, I'm going to sit down, it's time to meditate, I'm going to find where I'm going to focus my breath at a certain point or, a certain space, and then I'm going to put my attention on it, and then I'm going to, if my mind wanders, I'm going to notice that and come back to it, and that's what breathing meditation is all about. And you can really work yourself up to a kind of an intense state of mind by being so immediately directive, and just to really suggest to yourself to just come into the presence of the full body. Just start to notice the areas where there's discomfort, the areas where there's discomfort, relax. Even tell yourself sometimes, unless you are able to move into the breathing very quickly, through your own experience. But tell yourself, okay, don't watch your breath right now. Just get to know your body, get to feel your body. Go through, scan through if you want to, quickly or slowly, and just be present with the bodily sensations, with the bodily experience. And as you get comfortable and relaxed, without strain, without expectation, then as the body and the mind start to settle and relax, then the breathing becomes much more naturally apparent, and then it becomes a very natural thing to just start to tune into that. Some of the other distractions have settled down, the body feels comfortable, and you don't have to go and, as Ajahn Sucitto has often said, you don't have to go and pin down the breath and tackle it and hold on to it. You just start to naturally want to turn your attention to it because it's gentle, it's relaxing, it's rhythmic, without having to force yourself to do that. So that attitude of non-forcefulness, I think, is crucial. As well as the other image that kind of really struck me, and that I use a lot, is because we live in the forest, is that image of, at the time of the Buddha, forest-dwelling contemplatives needed to directly experience their body in order to get through the forest, get through the dangers of wild animals and threats in the forest. It's that kind of sense, like if you've spent any time in Abhayagir, you know that we have mountain lions here, and there's a sense if you've seen one here, or like a rattlesnake, and I can, from my own experience, that when I've ever seen mountain lions, at least for several days afterwards, my attentiveness is much greater when I'm walking up to my kuti, particularly the time that there were mountain lions right at my kuti. At least for a few days, this sense of alertness was really there, or seeing a rattlesnake on the path. So just to actually, your body is alive. It's not something that you have to think about. So really just when you're walking through the forest, try and bring that up as a recollection. And then when you're watching the sensations in your body, you're observing and experiencing the whole body, see if you can bring up that kind of sense of aliveness and undistracted alertness to the whole bodily experience, without, of course, getting into fear and anxiety and tension, but it's that kind of level of awakeness, alertness, aliveness, along with that very easygoing sense of just relaxing into the whole body, that I think is a real key towards this beginning of settling of the mind into clear awareness, mindfulness and clear awareness.